Hi, I'm Skill Singh, and on this channel, I help you build accessible web applications, cover data science concepts, and share awesome UI and ADA tips and tricks. In today's video, we will make the custom drop-down menus web accessible that can either have checkboxes or images within them. HTML select tags are by default web accessible and no additional coding is needed for them. Now if you are new to this channel, then consider subscribing and smash that like button for more people to see it and develop ADA compliant web applications. Let's get into the video and discuss what an ADA compliant drop-down menu should have. First, a user should be able to open a drop-down using Enter and spacebar key press or with the mouse click. Second, a user should be able to close it using Escape, Enter, or by tabbing to another element and by clicking on it again. Third, a user should be able to navigate using up or down arrow keys, plus using a home key to take user to the first option within the list and pressing End key to take user to the last option. Fourth, for the multi-select dropdown, a user should be able to select multiple options without using a modifier key such as Shift or Control. Fifth, selections should be done using the spacebar key or by clicking on it. Sixth, a screen reader should read the current state, whether an option is selected or not selected, and the option number within the list. Now let's jump into our code and develop ADA compliant drop-down menus. For this video, we'll be referring to the area list walk role specifications highlighted on this link. I'll be putting this link in the description below for your reference. This page specifies what all specifications we need to follow to make a custom drop-down menu ADA compliant. And they also have some of the examples that we will be using in our video today. Let's start by creating custom element or custom drop-down element. So let's say will have a label. To give some ID to this, we'll say label underscore dropdown, and this will have our helper text will say select a color. And then let's create our custom dropdown. I'll add one button, and this button should have an ID. We'll say btn underscore dropdown, and this should have an area labeled by, and this should refer to the label of this or the ID of this label. So I'll copy here. Oh, there are spelling mistakes here, so let's say area hyphen labeled by equals to the ID of the label that we just created. Second, we need to have another attribute. We'll say area has pop-up, and we can set it to a list box. We'll say list box, and then we'll close it. And this can have a helper text. We can select an option. Now that we have added our button, but this button does not look like a drop down, let's go ahead and add some CSS. To save some time, I have already created some CSS that I'll be simply copy pasting from here so that we can focus on making the element ADA compliant only. So let's go ahead and add the styling that we need. I'll put it underneath this one. All this code will be available for you to download from my GitHub repository. I'll have the link down below. Okay, let's paste here, save it. Let's refresh our page. The styles been applied because if I go back to my drop down, I gave area has pop-up equals to list box. It should be true. Now when I gave it true, all my stylings that I just added are applied. Now we have our button on click of which we want a list to open up below, and that will hold the other values. Now let's go ahead and create that list. For that, we need a UL tag. Let's create a UL tag here. I'll give one ID. We'll say UL underscore dropdown. I'm keeping the names very generic. Next, we need to add a role, and role should be list box. And then we should have tab index, which we can set to -1 because we don't want that UL element to get a focus while we are tabbing through it. And then we can have another attribute. We can say area labeled by, and then we can again refer to the ID of this label. Let's paste this one. Let's close this UL tag. Now we have our UL. We need to add its child elements. We'll say li, and then we can give a unique ID. So we can say li underscore option underscore red. Close this and have red as our first option. Similarly, let's copy this one and have 3 more options. I'll say yellow, green, and orange. We have to change the IDs as well, so let's go ahead and change the IDs. I'll copy this color and append it at the last. Let's save it. Alright, we have our list, but this list is actually in the open state. Now let's go ahead and add a class that I added in my CSS. I'll say hidden. Now all the elements within this list are hidden. Next is to add the JavaScript that is needed to open or close this dropdown and other interactive event handlers that are needed. There is one thing that we missed, and that is to add role equals to option for all the available options within the list. So let's copy this one and add it all the list items. I'll add it to green. We'll add it to we need a space as well, so let's add a space after that attribute. Let's save this. To keep things simple, we'll not be covering the JavaScript part here. I'll refer to the link that I have used to use the JavaScript library. Let's simply add another folder. We'll say JS, and that JS can hold our dropdown related to JavaScript. So we have our dropdown. I have copied the content from the link that I'll be using for this demo. I'll refer the link in our description. Let's go back to our dropdown.html and refer it within our head tag. So immediately after this link, I'll say script. We have to provide the source. We have to go one folder outside of this and go to JavaScript, refer to the dropdown.js, and that's it. Let's refresh our page and see if we are able to click on this and whether we are able to open this dropdown or not. So let's click on this. It's not opening. Let's see if there is any error. Yes, we do have one error. If I click on this error, it gives that it's asking for a get attribute of null. So let's go back to our dropdown.js. So it's looking for an attribute which is area active descendant. So what we missed is we have to add this attribute to this UL tag. Let's go ahead, and after this let's add equals to empty. Let's refresh this page, and when I click on this link, now we can see different options displayed within it. Next, let's see 6 different checklists that we just spoke about, if they are being adhering to this code changes or not. I'll be using my keyboard keys mostly for this demo, so let's go ahead and press a tab. Now my focus is on this drop down. I'm pressing enter key. It opens up my drop down. If I press my enter key again, it closes the drop down. Next, when I press spacebar key, it opens up my drop down, and if I press spacebar key again, it closes it. Next, when I press enter key, I can use my down arrow keys to move the focus or go to the next element within the list. Next, when I press home key, it takes me, let's open this one first. Let's go to the end of these options. When I press home key, it takes my focus to the very first element, and when I press end key, it takes my focus to the last element. Now by pressing spacebar key, I can make the selections. Cool, this is working as per the ADA checklist that we have covered so far. Now say suppose we have to convert this drop down from a single select option to a multi-select options. We can simply do it by going to this UL tag and adding another attribute. We can say area multi-selectable equals to true, and the code related changes are actually part of this dropdown.js library that you can refer from the descriptions below. If I go back to my browser, refresh it, click on select an option, I can select multiple options. And all the ADA checklists that we have talked about so far for the single select dropdown should adhere for the multi-select dropdown as well, with one more benefit that user does not need to press Control or Shift key modifiers to make the selections. A user can select an option by pressing spacebar key, move on to the next using up or down arrow keys, and make the selections. Cool. I trust this video helped you develop ADA compliant dropdown menus. Please comment on which element I should make a video. See you in the next video. Till then, keep coding. Please like, share, and subscribe to this channel when you find it helpful.